In this lecture, we're going to talk about what adults should be doing while children are engaged in play. So in other words, what is our job? So essentially, our job is to interact with children. There are times when children can be playing independently, but we should at least always be hovering in the background, keeping a watchful eye, and recognizing appropriate and advantageous moments to step in and interact in more substantial ways with young children, not directive, but facilitating, scaffolding, etc. So before we get going on why we should be doing this and how, I'd like you to watch a little video related to the why part. So Robert Pianta is a premier researcher and scholar in this area related to teacher-child interactions and is going to talk with you a little bit in this video about why it is important for us to interact with children while they play, and also talk with you about the CLASS tool, which is the Classroom Assessment Scoring System, and how it can be a useful way to measure the quality of our interactions with young children. It is used often in research, and it is often used in real-time practice. We use it all across the state of California to provide a measure of how well teachers are doing in this teacher-child interaction arena. And then we can use that feedback to provide to teachers in their classrooms so that they can do a better job in that aspect of their teaching. So now that you understand the general importance of teacher-child interactions and how those can be measured, we're going to talk about three main things related to how we can best as adults maximize children's play. Again, what should we be doing? What is our job to help children to have access to play and to play at the highest levels that they are capable of playing at? So we need to allow children to direct their own play. We need to scaffold that play appropriately when children are directing it, and we need to provide time for children to play. So we're going to go into each of these areas. We'll start with why it is important for children to direct their own play. First, let's talk about different kinds of play that children can be involved in. The ones that I have starred on this chart are the types of play that we should be trying to facilitate and maximize for young children. I'm going to share with you some research on the next 3 slides coming up, but first let's just talk about what these different kinds are, and just note that free play and guided play are where we want to hang out with the 0 to age 8 set in particular. This is based on the work of a scholar named Kathy Hirsch-Pasek. She is very well renowned and known in the field of early childhood, particularly as it relates to play. So play can be both child-directed or adult-directed, and child-initiated or adult-initiated. So let's talk about the initiation piece first. So child-initiated versus adult-initiated means who is in charge of deciding that play is going to happen. Is the child saying, oh, I want to play with this material, I'm interested in this material, I want to see what this material does, I'm going to sit down and play with it? Or is an adult saying, come over here, I've got something cool I think you would like to see, let's play with it right now? So child-initiated or adult-initiated. Play can also be child-directed or adult-directed. So a child can be the one in charge. I'm going to see what I can do with this material. I'm going to decide how long I'm going to stay there. I'm going to determine the nature of this play. Versus an adult-directed. The adult says, this is how you're going to play with this material. This is how long you're going to stay here. This is what you're going to do while you're here. This is who you're going to play with. So as you can see, we really don't want to be adult-directed. We do not want to tell children exactly what to do with materials and how long they have to play with materials and who they're allowed to play with and what their final and end product is supposed to be. So both of these starred items are in the child-directed realm, letting children decide how to use materials, what problems they would like to solve, what strategies they would like to explore, who they would like to play with, how they would like to play with them, how long they would like to remain playing with that particular material. We should be letting children lead that charge. But adults do have a role. So sometimes children are coming to that child-directed play on their own. That's what we call free play or free choice time. But sometimes we are saying, hey friends, let's who wants to cook pancakes today? Who wants to help me mix the batter? I've initiated that, but children can come if they want to. They can leave if they want to. They can determine who they would like to interact with while they're there. They can decide if they want to stir something or if they just want to sit and watch. But I am bringing them over for something I think would interest them and then letting them have a lot of free reign over how that gets actualized. When I'm co-opting, basically what I'm doing is a child has decided that they want to play with something and then I come over and take it over. So one time I was watching a little girl typing on a typewriter. School had brought in an old typewriter for a child to play on, and the child was happily typing away on the keys, watching the keys make marks on paper. They were 3. They're obviously not typing any words. They don't know how to type words yet, but we're enjoying the motor movement and seeing letters appear on the page. A teacher came behind the child, put their arms sort of over the top of them and said, "What letter is that? What letter is that? What word does that make?" And the child kind of ducked out from under their arms and left because the adult took it over. The adult took over, which was a pleasurable, fun activity that was working on motor skills and seeing letters and all kinds of good stuff, and tried to turn it into something of their own making. They co-opted or they took it over. Direct instruction is not only when we invite children to come over to do something, but then we're very strict and directive when they get there. This is how you must do this activity, and this is how long you have to stay. So another time I was watching in a classroom, and an adult had a big pile of worksheets, and she made all these 3- and 4-year-olds come over to the table to do this big pile of worksheets, and told each child that they had to do at least 5 worksheets. The children would do them. She would shove them in a basket in the middle of the table, not even give feedback to the children on what they were doing, would yell at them if they weren't doing the worksheets correctly, would come drag them back if they didn't want to finish all 5 of the worksheets. This was nothing really that children were getting out of this activity. There wasn't any problem solving. There wasn't any determining of how to use materials or what would be the most interesting way to approach what was happening. And really it was like numbers and letters, which could so have easily be done in hands-on manipulative play-based activities involving numbers and letters that children would be inherently interested in and would choose on their own. And then all you have to do is scaffold and facilitate and talk with children while they're playing, rather than directly trying to teach them something or directly instructing them to do an activity in a particular way with dubious educational value. I want to give you a research example to show why free play and guided play are more advantageous than co-optive or adult-directed play. So this slide and the next slide are going to be talking about this particular study. So they got a bunch of preschoolers together at a children's museum, and they gave the children a toy. It's kind of like a Bop It-like toy. I don't know if you've ever played with that, where there's various things that you can do and the toy will react in various ways. So basically, the children got to play with the toy, but they were in different conditions. So some of the children played with the toy after an adult showed them how to make the toy squeak, but didn't show them how anything else worked. So basically the adult said, here's how you can make this toy squeaked, walked away, and then let the kids play with it. And then some of the children, they played with the toy after an adult just said, hey, wow, this is a cool toy. Look at this. So two different conditions. One, direct instruction, showing the children to do something, but then not giving them any other hints that it can do anything else. And the other, really just kind of more guided, free choice kind of land where you just, I'm saying, wow, this is a really cool thing. Come over and see what you can do with it. If you want to learn more about the study, I would encourage you to read the article on this slide. So let's go to the next slide to talk about what the researchers found. What were the results? And I want you to think in your head, what do you think, which condition led to the children playing longer, discovering more things? What do you think is going to lead, which prompt, direct instruction prompt or a more guided free choice kind of prompt is going to lead to the best play on the part of children? If you thought that children would exhibit the best play, the longest play, with a more guided approach rather than a directive approach, you are correct. So many of the children who were shown how to make the toy squeak but were given no other information failed to discover even one other function. So basically they played with it for a couple of minutes, they made it do what the adult told them that it could do, and then they stopped playing with it. They didn't explore, they didn't create, they didn't problem solve, they just followed the adult's instructions and then walked away because that's boring. Children in the other condition, so the condition where the adult just said, hey, look at this cool toy, those children, on average, found one or two functions that they had not been taught and played with the toy longer. So children who were directly instructed only did what the adult told them to do and did not play with the toy very long, whereas children who were given a more open-ended prompt found things on their own that the toy could do and played with it. Although I know an extra minute does not seem long, it was a statistically significant finding, which means that the children played with the toy in a statistically significant longer amount than did children who were given direct instruction. So these results suggest that children play longer, more creatively, and in a more exploratory way when they are directing play rather than being directed. And I do want to impress upon you that this is indeed the case, that when children are given the opportunity to engage in guided play or free play, that they develop better language skills, cognitive skills, academic skills, regulation skills, and that children who are subject to direct instruction in the early years do not gain those benefits. And as we will talk again in our Play in Schools lecture, sometimes we actually see deficits, particularly in the social emotional realm. So I assure you that there is ample research to show that free play and guided play with children between the ages of 0 to 8 in particular are best. We've talked about that children need to direct their own play. Now we're going to move on to talking about how adults can best scaffold children's play. And we're going to spend a few slides on this, and then we'll talk a little bit at the end about the time issue, the third issue that I said that we would be talking about. But we're going to spend a fair amount of time right now on how we can best scaffold or facilitate. Because remember, we're not engaging in direct instruction. That has not proven to be the best place to hang out. So if the best place to hang out is letting children play freely or engaging in guided play with them, what does that look like? What do we need to be doing? So in your textbook and also among scholars who are interested in the roles of adults, there is a determination that has been made that the best things for adults to do are in this green box on this slide. But there are many roles that adults take on throughout the day, and it doesn't mean that we don't ever do any of the other ones, but we should, when we're sitting down with children while they're playing, we should be trying to do mainly these 4 in the box. But let's talk about all of them real quick. So sometimes we need to behave as caretakers. We need to wipe children's noses and help them with toileting and wash their hands and get them meals. That is also part of our job. Not really our job so much when children are playing, but definitely our job in and around and throughout the day. Sometimes we need to act as a safety behavior monitor. We need to help children to understand what limits are in the classroom, how to take turns with materials without injuring one another, how to use equipment without causing injury or distress. I will say, though, that if children have great activities and you are sitting with them and facilitating while they're playing, you may find that you are doing less of the safety behavior monitor because children are busy and constructive and happy. Sometimes we're just chatting with children about general things. How was your evening the night before? Did you sleep well? How is your doggy? I know your doggy had to go to the doggy doctor, so sometimes we do a little bit of that as well. All perfectly reasonable things to do sometimes, but where we really need to hang out, because primarily when children are with us, they should be learning, and for young children, playing is learning, so primarily children should be playing. So sometimes we are acting as a stage manager. We are setting up activities, we're providing materials for activities, we're setting up the classroom, we're getting the stage ready. It comes from an acting perspective. So a stage manager is the person who makes sure that the play can be delivered, that the sets are in place, that the props are in place, that everything is ready to go. It is hard for children to play if we have not done that well. This may even happen while play is happening. So sometimes children need extra materials, or they have an idea for how to do something and you need to go hunt around in the classroom and see if there are any materials that might help children to enact their grand vision of what they would like to be working on. Sometimes we're just hanging out and watching children play. And we're not watching and letting our minds drift away and thinking about what we're going to have for dinner later. We're watching, we're intently watching, we're observing, we're looking for opportune moments to share in the play with children, to ask them a question, to make an interesting comment. We are observing with intent, not just observing randomly. That is what a play monitor is. Sometimes we're playing alongside children. They're scooping rice into containers, although remember I was saying before that I don't really prefer to use food items, so I would probably not be using rice, but we're scooping sand into a container, and children are scooping sand into containers alongside us, and maybe we're talking about what we're doing. I'm scooping sand. I'm going to make a sandcastle. It looks like you're scooping sand also, so it doesn't mean that we can't be talking, but we are playing alongside children. Sometimes we step it up a little bit more and we are a play enhancer. So we are not just playing alongside children and commenting on what's happening like a sportscaster. We are playing with children. We are taking on roles. We are helping them to build structures. So we are inserting ourselves a little bit more. And this could be potentially with younger children who need a little bit more direction, or a child who is struggling with a play partner, and we are intervening in a more explicit way, but not completely taking over the play and telling children explicitly what to do, because that is a director or an instructor, and that falls into that co-opting or direct instruction land that we are going to try to avoid. So I'm going to be talking a little bit more on the next few slides about this talking to children during their play piece and what kinds of things we should be saying. What are the right words to use while children are playing? So talking is one of the best tools in your toolbox related to facilitating children's play. So I just want to point out how important this is before we dig a little bit into some types of teacher talk that would be appropriate to use. So a 2011 study in the journal Child Development found that preschool teachers' use of sophisticated vocabulary in informal classroom settings predicted their students' reading comprehension and word knowledge in 4th grade. So just by you using interesting vocabulary, words that children have not heard before, just by doing that while you're talking to children, you are increasing their reading comprehension and their word knowledge down the line. But unfortunately, much of the conversation in today's preschool classrooms is one directional. So we're talking at children rather than with them. And simplistic. So we are I can't think of a better phrase, but we're dumbing down the kinds of words and language that we're using with young children, and we're talking at them, not with them. As teachers steer students through a highly structured schedule, herding them from one activity to another, signaling approval with a quick, good job. So this is unfortunately kind of the hallmarks of direct instruction. Everybody doing everything at the same time. Everybody doing everything in one way. Everybody being on a very strict schedule. Everybody not having the opportunity to determine how they would like to do their work and what is interesting to them to learn. Praise rather than deep, meaningful conversations. So the Erica Christakis, the person who wrote this quote, she also wrote a great book that I would encourage you to look for. It's called The Importance of Being Little, and it really digs into what we are doing to young people, particularly very young people, and how we are sort of robbing them of the beauty and magic and importance of childhood, and that we are trying to rush them along through things that aren't meant for them, that aren't developmentally appropriate, that are just too old. We're just not being patient enough with where children are at developmentally and leaning into the moment in time that children are in. So it's a really profound book. It really is very eye-opening and great food for thought. Here's some stuff that you can do. So when you're sitting with children and playing with them, here is the kind of talking that is important to be engaging in. So one, we want to make sure that we're engaging in serve and return, that when children serve the conversational ball to us, that we hit it back, that we don't just ignore them. So if a baby coos at you, responding to that cooing. If an older child makes a statement, responding to the statement. If a child asks you a question, answer the question. Just making sure that we are not ignoring children's conversational bids. And it really is important too to pay attention to nonverbal language. Children aren't always saying something to us, but sometimes we can tell that they've served us up something nonverbal, and how can we respond to that? When you are sitting and playing alongside them, you're not directly playing with them, but you're playing alongside, or you're observing, you can be engaging in parallel talk and self-talk. So parallel talk is talking about what children are doing. I see that you're scooping the sand and you put a little water in and now the sand is sticking together. Or you're talking about what you're doing. I'm going to pick you up and then I'm going to take you over to change your diaper. Sometimes people now refer to this as sports casting, where you're like a sportscaster and you're doing a play-by-play, either of what you're doing or what the children are doing, but the original terms for this were parallel and self-talk. When we repeat what children have said, not correct them, but repeat after them. So if a child says wabbit, you can say, "Oh, I see you have a rabbit. That little stuffed rabbit is so cute and so fuzzy and so fluffy." So I have now modeled rabbit several times without directly correcting the child. We can also expand on children's language. When a child says something, we can repeat it and then we can expand on what they've said. So if a young child says car go, I can say, yes, your child is going, or your car is going. Your car is going very fast. Let's see if we can make your car go some more, right? These are all things that I can do to both repeat and expand. So there's expansion and then there's also extension. So I repeat, I expand, and then I provide even more information. Yes, your car is going. It is going very fast. So the child had not said anything about the car going fast, but I'm adding that in. I can ask children questions. Sometimes we do ask close-ended questions, but it is better if you can to try and ask open-ended questions. Close-ended questions tend to be ones where children are either asked to give basic factual information or they are asked to respond yes or no, which is really not a serve and return kind of conversation. It's kind of a I want a specific answer from you, and then the conversation is kind of over. So what color is your car? Red. Not a whole lot we need to talk about after that. Versus, what do you think would happen if you put another block on your tower? That is opening up conversation and definitely creating more of a serve and return and a thinking opportunity. I'm not just asking for confirmation of some sort of factual bit, but I'm really asking the child to use language in their response to think about what's happening in the world around them. So what we're trying to do here is create what is called thick conversations, conversations that are meaningful and bidirectional and expand children's language skills and their understanding of the world and their cognitive problem solving abilities, not thin conversations, which are unidirectional, short, to the point, not meant to expand, not meant to create new opportunities for learning and growth. So I would encourage you to take a look at the document in the link on this slide, because it will tell you more about this idea of thick versus thin conversations and how we can help to achieve those. So some additional ways to enhance play, and this is also related to the time piece. Remember I said that we need to be facilitating child-directed play. We need to be engaging in excellent facilitation, scaffolding, not direct instruction. And I also said that we need to allow children time. So I'm going to talk about time first because I said that's one of those really important pieces. But we want to make sure that children have at least 60 minutes to engage in their play. It is very hard for children to get deep into play without allowing them enough. So if you are providing only 20 minutes, a half an hour, that's research has not shown that that's enough time for children to get deeply involved in play. So children should have at least an hour of uninterrupted indoor playtime and at least an hour of uninterrupted outdoor playtime every day. So very important to think about how you're navigating schedules so that you can make sure that children are getting an ample amount of time. And I would encourage you to take a look at the link on the effects of the play period duration on children's play patterns, in addition to what I just said. So we've also talked about prior how we need to give children the opportunity to get and use materials. We've talked about using appropriate teacher talk strategies. We have not specifically yet talked about just liking playing with children. This is part of our jobs as early educators, is to like what we're doing and to show children and experience joy with them. There is data to show, and I mentioned this in the benefits of play lectures, that when we joy in our play with children, that they are more likely to reap the benefits from it. It's great to actually include children. What would you like to learn? What materials could we bring in the class? What do you need to do the things that you would like to do related to learning more about this particular topic? You'd be surprised how much children are able to navigate and do on their own with just some support from the adults in their lives. We've talked about facilitating rather than directing, so assist, don't tell. Watching children carefully, that was one of those good teacher roles. That was the play monitor. Being a good intent observer and an observer with a purpose. And when children are having challenges, help them. Don't just leave them to flap in the wind on their own and try and figure things out, but try not to swoop in too early. So be a hummingbird, not a helicopter. So don't take over, but be there for when children need you. We talked about that with the risky play. And then if you want to see a great example of how adults can support children in their play, I would encourage you to watch The Bakery, the video link on the last bullet on this slide, about how you can support children in the dramatic play area. So this is an example of the things that we've talked about throughout this lecture and on this slide. So finally, I just want to note that these things are dependent on teachers doing the behind-the-scenes work that they need to do. So education and experience and specialized training matters. So I know that some of you are in this class because you are working in elementary school environments and you would like to work with younger children, and you are required to get units specifically related to understanding younger children. And there's a reason for that. The reason is that you need to have knowledge that is specific to the age of children that you would like to teach. So formal education, important. So education at the BA level or above tends to increase classroom quality, and that education in early childhood and child development is particularly important. In the absence of formal education, specialized training can increase competency. So sometimes you might take training in special areas like a trauma-informed care class or certificate to step up your knowledge in that area that maybe you did not get through your formal education courses. Now, I want to note a tricky one with experience. So moderate classroom experience is helpful. When teachers have too little experience, under 3 to 5 years, they kind of have a hard time. It's a learning time. We're not always at our best sort of early when we're trying to figure everything out, but there's kind of a sweet spot. And as teachers get past kind of a moderate amount, so, more than 3 to 5, but probably less than 10 or so, they are very sensitive and their experience serves them in good stead. But then once we start hanging out in classrooms too long, our sensitivity to children and their needs and the particulars of their learning lives may decrease over time because you get tired. There is caregiver fatigue, and it is real, and we are caregivers in early education classes. So maybe just something to think about and sort of keep in mind as you grow and gain in more years of experience.